Now we're moving on to The Bird Bard of Icecatraz, and I may be the only one who's a fan of Futurama who also thinks that this is a much more fun and gratifying experience than the previous episode. Give me Bird Bard of Icecatraz over The Luck of the Friarish. Not that I think this is a great episode. It's actually quite silly, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
And it's like an example of season 3 sort of leveling sort of this sci-fi concept at us, in this case sort of the penguins and this reserve on Pluto, and just like
it's a bit more of a topical concept.
to the time of its release.
Yeah, Futurama has a few like sort of very like Y2K era like environmentalism episodes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the sort of late Clinton Democrat, Al Gore sort of stuff, right?
A big piece of garbage is an example of that.
Yeah.
Crimes of the Hot Later, that's a great example.
Yeah, there's quite a few if you think about it. And this sort of falls a bit more into that, but it's a bit more sort of like zany, like you mentioned as well, though.
Yeah.
That's just sort of the loose concept to hang on, like all the sort of jokes of the episode, or like Bender becoming a penguin. You know,
Yeah.
these sort of ideas. Leela as a sort of environmentalist as well, or at least an animal lover. Like I guess in other episodes, Love Labors.
Yeah, of course.
That's a bit more like a Greenpeace-y sort of thing.
I just love the idea, and also the dark matter affecting the penguins' rates of repopulation.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good one. Yeah, where they start multiplying at ridiculous rates.
Yeah, like
so that's a cull.
And it's borderline apocalyptic, like that brilliant shot of all the penguins at the window, like smashed in there, like they're being crammed into a phone booth. Like it's just so funny and like scary too. Like as a kid, that was quite like gnarly to me, and just them getting all murderous and trying to kill people at the end. That's some great Treehouse of Horror stuff. It makes you think of that interesting, and this is kind of horrifying as a kid, that Day of the Dolphin segment of The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to
Ruthless. That. And just that shot of the penguins with the guns at the end. That was so brilliantly like just wicked in a primary school sense. Just the penguins gonna get their penguins with the guns down. They're gonna get their revenge.
Yeah, it is
like that's classic.
It is sort of very Futurama to end an episode like that, as well, like with Bender's last line just being like, "Oh, I taught him well, they'll be fine."
yeah.
And then so it's like sort of aping off of I guess like a Star Trek thing. What's it, the whatever protocol? Making first contact with the species.
The Prime Directive.
Yeah, Prime Directive. It's kind of like that, right?
I like also we briefly have this joke where Bender loses his memory after an encounter with an orca, which spits him out because he's not a penguin.
Yeah.
But then they bring the orca back as the way with which the penguins are defeated.
Yeah.
I love that a lot.
That really is cool. When the big junk pile of penguins floats into the orca's mouth. It's hilarious. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good.
I wonder, he must be well fed. Like, won't need to eat again for 5 years.
Maybe. No, I just like it's a good instance of Futurama being set on like an exotic location, and all this like Pluto sort of Arctic looking, Antarctica, there's penguins environment, looks beautiful, good stuff. The penguins are well animated, and it's just...
There was only 2 episodes away from Neptune.
Oh, the Robot Santa.
Yeah.
I think this snow environment's more vast and they kind of explored.
Yeah.
Takes up more of the episode.
But I never thought about it. They're in Pluto and Neptune pretty close to each other.
Good point. And I also the other thing I like is it's just a very funny episode as well. Like another one we're talking about side characters in the previous discussion. One of the great side characters is panning out of the Planet Express ship, and there's a big giant space squid.
Yeah,
on the
that's
back
a good
of it.
bit.
Glorious. That's the humor of the show right there. In a way.
Yeah, well,
classic.
Yeah, I was honestly thinking this is like a better version of a season 2 episode.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah. 100%.
It's got the feeling or tone of a season 2 episode, but then it wouldn't have shots or gags like that squid in season 2.
Yeah.
Whereas that's more of a season 3 sort of thing.
Season 3 feels like it was like amping up the sci-fi a little bit, whether consciously or not. And this is an instance where they're amping up the it's a silly premise, but it's very sci-fi. And they kind of really go all out with it in a way that, like, season 2, they were kind of just very ha-ha and slapdash sometimes. Whereas I think with this one, it was it's more serious. It's like a brief little story about Bender as a penguin and, like, Leela having a a bit of a crisis when it comes to saving these penguins or not. You know, by killing them, they introduce a sci-fi concept of the penguin overbreeding apocalypse. It's interesting like that, and I think they more thoughts. If this was a season 2 episode, I think it would stand out as like a pretty quality episode as far as like something that seemed like throwaway otherwise. But in season 3, it just seems like another instance of, even if they have like a fairly oddball premise, like you say, take Bending in the Wind, they do a lot more with it. Bending in the Wind got plenty of like alien creatures to gawk at, broken robots, a big giant caterpillar in the Chinese New Year's parade.
Yeah.
Like, what I mean? Season 2 didn't do this enough, I feel. Like, that's why season 3 always, maybe it's just more budget, but very 3 and 4, very visceral animation. And dare I say that the first season did this a little bit more so just because it was new and trying to, show off its potential.
Season 2, did that have the Bugalo episode?
No, that's coming up.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't done that one yet.
Yeah.
See, that's an example. That's a silly premise, but it's really fun. The animation's terrific.
Yeah.
Great, luscious visual expanse. I think it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a better example
Season
than Bending in
2's
the Wind, even.
A bit more... Yeah, she's Bending in the Wind.
Think about Why Must There Be a Crustacean in Love, but it's all just like one... It's not really... Decapod's not a very interesting location, all things considered.
No.
The one in season 2 example of this is Deep South. But season 3 would do more with it.
Yeah.
I feel I like Deep South a little bit. Even like, Bender Gets Made is just like a fairly basic, yarn, and it's mostly set on Earth and a bit in space. The Honking's mostly set on Earth, or entirely actually. Oh, they go here and there. I think they travel to a couple other planets looking for the Wereka's ancestors, other victims. It's just I mean, I don't want to be too negative on season 2. It's a very fine piece of work overall, and there's some major classics in there, like at least maybe up to 4 or 5. But yeah, I'm definitely of a mode that I think the show went into very strong new places in season 3, partly demonstrative via this episode because it is such a basic, silly premise, but they go all out with it in a way that I think the show, for at least a period there, just seemed to be sort of being a bit sort of silly and sort of character based without embracing the full potential of what, like they'd skin everything with like science fiction, but they wouldn't go all out with science fiction. They'd just skin sitcom plots of sci-fi elements, and that was sometimes perfect and brilliant. Where Lesser of Two Evils or Put Your Head on My Shoulders, or I guess Cryonicle when we're concerned. But I mean, then season 3 was guilty of some of the season 2's problems sometimes, at least where Leela of Her Own might be concerned, but
that's sort of an outlier.
For the very most part, I mean, season 3 is also helped by being by far the longest season. Season 3 has less than this. Season 4 has less than season 3.
Okay, yeah.
Season 4 is not the longest season. Like season 2 might be, it's about the same length as season 2, if not slightly shorter. So season 3's got has the benefit of having a whole wealth compared to the other seasons with which to sort of claim qualities to it, let's say. But no, I do think this is like a fairly silly but solid episode. That's my stance on Bird by Advice for Traz.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like a solid 7.5, 8 out of 10 sort of thing. It's just sort of like this episode is an example of like this show's consistency.
Yes, for sure.
That's what this sort of one reminds me of the most. It never like fully stuck out as in my mind as like a outstanding episode. With its sort of with what it brings to the table uniquely or anything. It just seems like Futurama went like running on sort of its own steam.
I feel like if this is a show you're watching just in its entirety for the first time via a streaming service, which people can do now, just one, just binging it, And I did that with certain shows. Like I couldn't do that with Futurama when it was just airing on television, and you had to go out and weed away and get the DVDs. And even then, like you're going to school and stuff, so you're watching them not at night usually, like not.
Sure, yeah.
Just all day or whatever. And plus, like there's other things to do when you're. There's a few other things I like to do as a kid, and I never liked binging shows anyway.
Yeah.
When I could that much, but with Futurama, you'd be watching the whole thing through, and even an episode like this, which isn't like, would just be like a whatever in another show with the sort of like ambitions that it has, it's like, yeah, it's really solid. You think you're watching it, think, yeah, this is great. This is just another good episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And you think about watching other shows of this ilk, like maybe it's Archer, whether it's certainly Rick and Morty, or whether it's Bob's Burgers, or whether it's, even South Park, like the old South Park to season 12 or whatever, like, you'd run across, like, sort of dud episodes in a way that, like Futurama's dud episodes have nothing on dud episodes of other shows.
Well, there's only, like, really one or two duds, that's the thing.
Yeah, like, I guess Leela of Her Own has pointed out, I've often considered, what is it called? The Route of All Evil to be not that interesting either.
That's a bit of a dud.
And to be honest, there's a couple of season 4 episodes where I think are a bit questionable, namely Spanish Fry, actually. And I never really cared, I don't care for, now at least, for the Kif gets knocked up a notch, actually. And season 2 got The Honking, which is not a favourite of mine as such. I love werewolf films,
I wouldn't call it
opportunity.
But I wouldn't call it a dud, though.
Yeah, it's approaching it for me, not gonna lie.
Yeah, maybe approaching.
I think Fry and the Sloan Factory is a kind of a dud, actually.
Yeah, that's not the best.
If season 1 has a dud, there it is.
That's a season 1 dud, yeah. There are a few funny jokes, but it's not the best episode by any
I just have the idea of, like, rewatching, if I, looking at the show's, list, Fry and the Sloan Factory, never.
Yeah, well, the sort of whole premise of that episode really lets
That's
it
it,
down.
yeah. Yeah, we talked about that when we discussed about a year ago now, actually.
But yeah, this one's just an example of how consistently good Futurama is. Like, yeah, like we were just naming a few of the duds, but that's about it. There's maybe, at most, if you want to, like, sort of steelman it, I guess, you could maybe say there are 5 duds.
Yeah, yeah.
But realistically, for myself, or at least, like, subjectively, I'd maybe say 2. Route of All Evil, and maybe not even a Leela of Her. It's a bit of a dud, but I don't mind that episode. I might even like it a little more than The Honking. I don't know. About on the same level.
Yeah, we'll get there, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll get there,
yeah. Because, similarly, like, Simpsons, like, first 8 seasons, like, there's not many duds there. And that's over 8, which is quite impressive. Everyone knows that, so it's almost no point in repeating it. But that's the only other. While we're talking about, when saying, like, no other show has it like Futurama, it's older brother is the only other one.
Yeah.
And that was over quite a while. I think...
And then it became the ultimate dud in the end.
That's true. King of the Hill, like, first 4 seasons probably don't have too many duds either.
Early on, less duds. But yeah, definitely. It's very consistent early on.
Yeah. Like, season 2, I remember thinking is, like, quite a strong piece of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different show. Yeah, solid stuff here. It preceded and perhaps foreshadowed the Penguin Quays of the mid-2000s, March of the Penguins, Happy Feet, Surf's Up. Well, if you're watching this years later and thinking, oh, this is aping off of those, not so. Maybe this was aping off of, those were aping off of this, but probably not. Futurama was, I think it's a relatively popular show now, but people were not familiar with it. It was sort of like just another, like, oh, this is like The Simpsons, but in the future. Like, people didn't really take to it at the time.
I think Marching with Penguins would have started the craze. that movie was huge, especially for a documentary.
Yeah, not many documentaries in the 2000s were that. That's probably the biggest documentary of the two. I think it was the highest grossing documentary upon its release.
Yeah, that would make sense. I think it made...
It might still be. Like, I don't know what other documentary would have grossed more than March of the Penguins since then. I can't imagine what.
And I think that's because that movie was like
Senna, maybe?
Experiment with like the highest fidelity cameras of the time. And
Morgan Freeman's narration.
Oh, did he narrate it?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay, wow.
I never saw it.
It makes... Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but it makes
sense. I was
sense
a kid, so I saw Happy Feet instead.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll close it here.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.